All right, everyone. So welcome to Caring for Caregivers. I am Trisha Burke, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Communication Studies here at Texas State, and I'm also a member of the WellCats leadership team. And I'm going to talk to you today about caring for caregivers. I think most of you are probably familiar with WellCats already, but just in case, this is our Texas State Employee Wellness Program. It's free to benefit its eligible employees, and we have things like exercise classes, cooking classes, one-on-one nutrition consultations, health behavior change coaching, and like this awesome education series. So if you're already a member, thanks for signing up. And if not, you can go to wellcats.txstate.edu and you can check it out and sign up. I'm here to talk to you today about caring for caregivers, and I'm glad that you've taken the time to come here and learn more about this important topic. I'm going to introduce the topic of caregiving to you and then talk a little bit about caregiving research and then include some insight from my friend, Dr. Nicole Person-Rennell, and talk a little bit about caregiving resources. Family caregiving is growing in the United States. 1 in 5, or 53 million Americans, are providing unpaid family care, according to the AARP. And I'm assuming most of you are here because you're caregivers or you want to support a caregiver, and I am a caregiver too. And so we are all in this together. This is a picture of my hand and my son's hand. So I'm Charlie's caregiver, and that means that I'm his mom, and I'm his nurse, and I'm his physical therapist and feeding therapist, and his appointment coordinator and insurance coordinator, and early intervention coordinator and medical supply coordinator, and all of these things. So this can be a pretty involved enterprise, and it's a lot of extra work. It's a lot of extra phone calls. It makes my days much longer. I'm sure you all can identify with that. And when you add it to a full-time job, and for me, another child, there's not a lot of time for myself every day. And some of you might feel a similar way when it comes to you and your caregiving responsibilities. So real quick, I would like to get a sense of who is hanging out with us today. So I'm going to send out a poll. I sent everyone the first question. If you could weigh in here on whether you're a caregiver or interested in supporting a caregiver, or both. Yeah. Okay, so it looks like we have, another caregiver. So a couple still haven't weighed in yet, but it looks like we have 2 caregivers, 1 person interested in supporting, and a couple people who maybe are neither of those things. So I could have included another one of those options. And if you are a caregiver, I'm curious to know who you're a caregiver for. So like in my case, I am a caregiver for a child, and other people might be a caregiver for an adult, a spouse or a sibling or a friend, or a parent who has a medical condition or terminal condition. So we have 1 person who is recording that they are a caregiver for an adult, and then other people who are just interested in learning more. And then the last thing I'm curious about is why you're here. So I have a few questions. Are you here to connect with other caregivers, learn about the caregiving experience, learn more about resources from Texas State, or learn about other resources available, such as from the state or the community? And you can check as many things as apply to your circumstances. Okay, so it looks like people are here to learn about the caregiving experience and resources from Texas State, as well as other resources. So I will do my best to give you all of that information. So as a person who is providing care, I can attest to the fact that caregiving can affect all different elements of our life, of our well-being, from our physical well-being to our psychological well-being, our social well-being, and our spiritual well-being. This model is called the Caregiver Quality of Life Model, the City of Hope Caregiver Quality of Life Model, and it was developed by Wittenberg et al. And it's mostly about caring for a family member with cancer, but it can apply to all different types of caregiving experiences. And it's showing basically the all-consuming nature of caregiving and how it affects our physical well-being. So you might feel physical symptoms of stress. You might have high blood pressure. You might have other types of chronic illnesses and conditions that come along with that. So I know that some parent caregivers sometimes develop autoimmune conditions when it comes to their physical well-being because of all the sleep deprivation and stress. And so that can be something that happens. We might also have psychological well-being, mental health challenges when it comes to caregiving. So it could be grief or denial or depression or anxiety or any of these things that go along with the caregiving experience. It could be social well-being challenges, like feeling isolated and feeling like other people don't understand, or shutting down, or feeling like you can't share this with other people in your life, like your coworkers or other friends who just don't quite understand your experience. And it also was related to our spiritual well-being. And so maybe that means that you have faith and you are trying to deal with what that means when it comes to your caregiving experience. For me, it means I've been trying to make sense of what's going on and why it's going on, and find meaning from the experience. And so all of these things are different elements of your social well-being. They all intersect, they all overlap. At some points in time, one of them might be doing a little bit more than the other, doing a little better than the other. And you might feel challenged when it comes to different elements of the well-being, but basically all of them are impacted by our responsibilities. And it really is demonstrating that all-encompassing effect that caregiving can have on our quality of life, as well as all of the things that we need to address with our own well-being, in addition to the well-being of the person that we're caring for. So because of my own experience and because I am an academic in the field of communication, I decided to work smarter, not harder. And I am doing caregiving research now to learn more about the experience of caregiving from a communicative standpoint and what exactly that means. And so part of what I have been doing is interviewing parent caregivers, because that's my experience, and because honestly that's underrepresented in the literature. Parents who are caring for their children are just kind of seen as parents, but really it's like I said, you're doing all kinds of other caregiving things too. And there is a lot of research on people caring for adults, and I wanted to represent that. But what I'm doing here reflects the caregiving experience as a whole, because what I noticed when I was talking to other parents is that, and I did interview people who were caring for older adults at first, there's a lot of similarities actually in the process of caregiving and the experience of caregiving, where everyone's kind of going through a grieving process and trying to manage multiple responsibilities and trying to understand what this means for their life when it comes to balancing the caregiving and their work and their own social life and other commitments and things like that. So I think that even if you're not a parent caregiver like me and you're caregiving for someone else, such as an older adult or an adult, a sibling or a spouse, that this still applies, because for all of us, there is this, while we might have rewarding and inspiring and amazing perspectives and experiences being a caregiver, we also sometimes have this profound level of grief that goes along with the loss of whatever it was that we expected. And maybe we expected to have a healthy partner and they're really struggling with their health and it affects other things in our life. Maybe we expected to have a healthy child and our child has health challenges that we have to manage that make it so that we can't necessarily have like a typical experience. So this is part of the process. And when I started trying to find other resources to help me understand the experience better, I found a podcast that's called The Rare Life, and it's a woman who interviews other parent caregivers. And as I was listening to the episodes, I noticed some similarities in the parents' experiences, the way that they were describing how they approach caregiving and their experience with their child. And so I got together with some of my colleagues and we contacted the host and we have transcripts and we're analyzing them. And we decided that this grief model applied to most of the parents' experiences. And that they also identified some facilitators and barriers. So this is going to give you some insight into kind of like what the experience is for people who are going through the process of caregiving. And so there's these different stages and then facilitators and barriers. And I'll give you some examples of what that looks like based on our coding of how families experience these things. So in a lot of people's experiences, they report feeling numbness or shock. And an example of this is a parent who said, the main thing that she was trying to tell me was something I just couldn't hear. And this is about a medical professional talking to her. And I think when we left there, we were just in complete shock. My husband was with me. He didn't say much. Like, he's a pretty stoic person, but we're on the highway heading home and we're in the right lane and he starts drifting onto the shoulder. And that quote kind of shows how that person was experiencing numbness or shock from receiving news of their child's diagnosis prenatally. And I think this also applies to some of the interviews that I did with adults who were talking about the caregiving experience of, my husband found out that he had cancer and we left the appointment in a haze and things like that. So this experience of numbness and shock really goes along with the beginning stages of finding out about the situation that leads to the caregiving experience. And there's also a period of intense grief that people might encounter that is marked by some different qualities. And that includes yearning, and this is like action or seeking information, trying to learn more and just like get a handle on the situation. And helplessness. And so this is a lot of the emotional aspects of just feeling like you're kind of drowning and you don't have control over things, and you don't know what's coming next. Behavior changes. And so this is where you might learn how to do something that like new medical skills or advocacy skills or other things like that you didn't previously know about, and a search for meaning. And so this is where you go into the experience and you try to understand more about what it is and what it means for your life and the person that you're caring for. So a quote that symbolizes the yearning aspect is, when you have a moment, you're researching or trying to figure out, how can I better serve her? How can I be a better mom to her? How can I be the best caregiver? And I think that people go through this too when it comes to caring for their spouse or their sibling, doing research for them, looking for that information support and just trying to see what they can learn. And if there are treatments they can explore and things like that. And that's the process of just like taking action and trying to problem solve. People also experience helplessness. So this parent says, sometimes I get afraid to get comfortable. I feel like I have to be mentally prepared to hear the next thing. And that is exhausting to try to prepare yourself in a mental way, or an emotional way to hear another diagnosis. And so this is a common experience by caregivers too, where they just like the hits keep on coming and you feel like you can't get comfortable, you can't get settled because you get a new diagnosis, or all of a sudden insurance doesn't want to cover something, or you have a new doctor, or like in my case last week, insurance all of a sudden was like kicked out of network from the doctor we see. So it's just always all kinds of things that come up unexpectedly that make it hard for you to kind of like get a grip on the situation and feel in control. And behavior changes. So this person mentions learning how to give your son an injection. And these are like the littlest needles that I think they even make, but I still remember how hard I shook the first couple of times we had to inject him. So you might have new skills or abilities that you never wanted to have. And that might be administering medicine or other care that make it so that you are changing your behavior in some way, or you might find yourself being a medical advocate or researching this condition and being an expert, or figuring out the legal paperwork that you need, all of these types of things. And then a search for meaning. And so this is an experience that caregivers have too when they try to basically transition from a phase of feeling loss to feeling reward or inspiration or hope, so that they find some benefits associated with the caregiving experience. And this quote says, "She has been such a healing power to me. I love her so much. That has nothing to do with anything about her diagnosis or about stigma or the world or the doctors or anything. And the work that is in my path right now is to grow to be worthy of being a mom to a child of such perfection." So that's a really lovely sentiment. And I think that family members who are providing care do feel like, even though it's so difficult to provide care, or it can be difficult for a lot of parents or people, there are so many rewarding aspects. Like you get to spend quality time with the person that you love and you care about, or you see like these little moments of light that make you feel happy, or recognize the person that they used to be, or that they still will be once they get through their treatment. Or you see how strong they are, and you see how amazing they are and how resilient they are. And so these can all be some really lovely parts of the caregiving experience that people have. This kind of goes hand in hand with this idea of reorganization. And so this is me and Charlie. This is a situation where kind of you're doing what I just explained in the last one, where you're moving towards acceptance or a new understanding, a new normal that you might have in your life, where you accept kind of where you're at with the phase of caregiving and what that means for you and your family. So this quote says, "By the time he was 9, I had sat through so many IEPs, and I'd come to a better place where I knew and felt who he was. I knew we were going to be on our own journey. I knew he wasn't defined by his IEP report." This is what one parent mentioned. And so she has a new understanding of her experience and is happy with the child that she has, instead of like getting caught up in the expectations of what she wanted them to be. And I think this is true for people who have chronic health conditions. Like if you have a knee replacement and you're taking care of your partner with a knee replacement, they might not be the person that they were before the knee replacement, but they are going to, get back to, or get to a new normal. And you guys will figure out what works for you on this journey that you're taking. So it can apply in that sense too. And another parent said, "Man, I wish I could have known myself then what life would be like, shown myself then what life would be like now. Like, look at this beautiful child that I just adore." And I think that, when you go into the situation of caregiving, a lot of times you're so overwhelmed with the situation, and you don't always feel like you're going to be able to manage things, but you do, and you will, and you can. And so when you get through the experience, and you figure out a way to accept the way that it looks in your life, then you can't always show yourself how you're going to be able to do that in the beginning, but it will happen, right? And so that's part of the reorganization. And then we have these facilitators and barriers. And facilitators are things that are helping us move through these processes and make the caregiving process easier. And so people mention things like the medical professionals, like the NICU doctor was so kind. He gave us research. He talked us through what that means, what it could mean, what it couldn't mean, and recognizing other people in your life who are helpful and supportive. So this person says, "But my husband, he's sitting there making her laugh. That's just who he is. he's a shoulder to cry on for me. He always keeping it positive and keeping it light if he can. So helpful sentiments and communication that people have as they go through the process. And then there are also some barriers, like I just keep getting patted on the back. I wanted the world to stop and pay attention to the alarms going off in my mind, but I wasn't receiving the response to the gravity that I was feeling. It was more like, oh, he'll just need some therapy and he'll catch up. And so these barriers sometimes you'll encounter, whether it's like insurance denials, or if it's doctors being insensitive, or people not listening to you, or family members not supporting you, or other challenges, coworkers not understanding why you need to be away from work. So these can be barriers in the experience as well. So we identified all different types of barriers, all different types of facilitators, but basically we're trying to help formulate the research in a way that helps people identify more of the facilitators and take advantage of those things, and try to limit the negative impact of the barriers in the caregiving process. And I talked to my friend Nicole about caregiving. So she is a physician in the College of Family Medicine at the University of Arizona, and she's also a caregiver for her child. And she says it truly takes a village to provide loving, constant care for someone in need. And I'm going to play you the conversation that we had. Can everybody still hear me now?
Yeah.
I don't see any. Let's see.
Yes, I can.
Let's play this for you. And, okay, tell me if you cannot hear. Hi, everyone. All right, so tonight I have with me my friend, Nicole, Dr. Nicole Person-Rennell, and she is a clinical assistant professor in the Department of Family and Community Medicine at Banner Medical at the University of Arizona. So I have Nicole with me today because I want to talk to her about caregiving, both from the perspective of a parent as well as a provider. Nicole is a parent to a child with significant medical complexities and developmental delays, and she also works with a variety of different patients and their families. So Nicole, can you tell us a little bit about what's been particularly helpful to you as a caregiver? The support and resources and insight and advice and things like that. And then what have you noticed in your professional experience has been helpful to your families as well?
Sure. It's nice to talk with you this evening. This is a topic that's close to my interest and obviously my family's life and needs. I think some of the things that we've really benefited from as caregivers, and it's, really, one is that anything that you could do to support your family, and that it truly takes a village to provide loving, but also constant care for somebody in need, whether that's, in my case, my child, or, and a parent, another sibling, a family member. So we, in particular, get respite care and respite services through the state, through the Department of Developmental Disabilities. And there's a few different programs around the country like this. This is not unique to Arizona, but it really helps allow for paid support for family members or outside individuals to help give support to existing family members. So that makes a big difference for our family. It's basically, as respite suggests, like a small amount of rest from basically the 24-hour care that is needed. And obviously everybody may not require 24-hour care, but at least that's what our life looks like, basically. And I think when we think about what that village of support also looks like, that if somebody can come and help you with food, or maybe we've occasionally hired a parent's helper who comes from 3 to 5 p.m. so that my husband can actually cook dinner when I'm at work, when there's, kids running around. Basically any help that you can get with some of the other pieces of life that aren't even necessarily direct care. So again, like somebody helping with dinner or somebody coming to watch the other kids while you can make dinner. Really, a lot of those other pieces make a big difference. I think that having a medical team that helps support you with other ideas or other local resources is really important. And that doesn't add to your burden because they're aware of the demands of kind of what you're doing. So having a team that's knowledgeable, I think in particular, you know, we have a great equipment clinic that helps, like, you know, getting a hospital bed for my child and with a lot of his equipment needs for his wheelchair and other things, and navigating that solo as a parent with the incredible world of insurance and durable medical equipment manufacturers and other things has been very daunting, and I've learned a lot. But having a team that can actually help guide you through those needs, whether that's your primary care physician or, you know, specialist team or a therapist team as far as physical therapy, other things, that can make a big difference. And I always guess putting on my professional hat when I talk with families a lot as a physician, I think a lot about coordinating those care and those services that make it easier for families to access services and not kind of putting up more barriers, and really kind of walking people through the durable medical equipment process and working with their teams and providers, because that world of, again, insurance and medical complexity for almost everybody it's like another language, and that's crazy coming from me as a physician. That the learning curve, even within something that I know a lot about, was very helpful.
Okay, so Nicole was basically talking to us about some different elements of caregiving that she thinks are important, which I'm going to highlight on this next slide here, and that includes respite care and helpers and a medical team. And so caregiving really does take a village. And one thing that you can look into if you're caregiving, or you can encourage someone to look into if you know that they're caregiving and they need a break, is respite care. And just like Nicole said, this is a small amount of rest from the care that is needed. And so for me, it might look like this picture where you're in the mountains and the trees with a lounge chair and a bottle of wine, this is a picture from a vacation I took before I was a caregiver. So I just use this as my happy place. And you might also look to other helpers who help with other pieces of life, like she said, food or childcare or errands or taking your dog for a walk or whatever it might be. And so for me, this is my sister-in-law who has saved our life over and over and over and over and over and over again, and who has been really amazing and wonderful and an important part of our family. And you also have your medical team, and it's hard work to find a medical team who truly does understand you and your situation, but they can provide you their knowledge, their resources, and like Nicole said, the guidance for services and equipment and insurance and things that you might qualify for. So all of these things are extremely important, critical elements of your caregiving village, and they make the caregiving experience better. So when it comes to caregiving resources at Texas State, we have Bobcat Balance, which I'm sure you all know. And when you click here, it'll take you to that website where it'll outline all of these different elements of Bobcat Balance, from the mental health counseling, the financial resources, the legal guidance, and the work-life solutions, all through our Bobcat Balance coordinator. And this is the contact information for them. And you can also go to guidanceresources.com, and it will take you to this website where you can log in and you can get access to those different resources. So if you just need to vent to someone and you need to have counseling services, or you need to set up an advanced care directive or anything like that with legal issues, you can get a legal consultation. So there's many different elements that are in here, or if you need to take care of yourself and have a doctor's appointment or see a specialist. So you can use this resource that we have through Texas State to provide those elements of your caregiving needs. When it comes to the state of Texas, we might have situations where you are taking care of someone, and you can be a caregiver of an adult or a child, but it gives you links to respite and what that looks like, what that is, and how to go about getting respite care set up. And it gives you resources for adults and children, as well as for being new to caregiving. If you want to support someone in your family by providing respite care, you can also go here to sign up to provide respite care so that someone in your family can take a break. Or if you want someone in your family to sign up so that you can take a break, this is really valuable. So we use this with my son. My sister-in-law, who you saw in the last picture, signed up to be his respite care provider, and she went through a training course, and then she watched him 11 hours a week and got paid to do it. And I got 11 hours of a break to do other things like groceries and cook dinner and go for walks and things like that. So that's a really valuable service that you can either try to look into yourself for the person that you're caring for, or to be a respite provider for someone else. And in addition to that, there's also this parent-to-parent support. So if you're a parent caregiver, you can try to sign up to be mentored by another parent. There's all kinds of things like this throughout the state of Texas too, when it comes to various organizations that are associated with specific health conditions. They're just basically support groups where you can talk to other people who are going through similar circumstances to you. And then when it comes to, let's see, other resources that are available, you can look at the AARP has supporting family caregivers in Texas, and you can go to this site and look at the various resources that you might be eligible for that are linked through the AARP, so you can understand more about that. And so here you can say, Take Time Texas again, and then community resource finders for things that are specific to your community, as well as quick tips. And then they have news articles about laws and things like that. So this is a valuable resource for people who are taking care of older adults. And similarly, there's this Elder Options of Texas link, which can give you information about care facilities and other resources, professional services, planning ahead, all of these really valuable tools to help you find what you need to provide care for the person that you are caring for. And in addition to those things, there are other community resources that you might be able to find through your local city and county websites. So I want to leave you with this quote about caregiving that resonates with me. This life is filled with both sorrow and joy, and both grief and gratitude, and they can coexist. I think a lot of the times people think that it's mutually exclusive. You have to feel gratitude, you can't feel grief, you have to be happy so you can't feel sad. And I've learned that you can actually feel both of these emotions at the exact same time. And in fact, you're going to feel a lot more than just two emotions at one time. It's every single emotion all at once, and it's okay. So thank you so much for coming to listen to this conversation about caregiving today. And I am more than happy to stick around and answer any questions that anyone has about caregiving, or any comments or anything else. If anyone has anything to share or to ask at all. And I will stop our recording just in case. I wanted to add a couple more quick things about caring for caregivers, which is the idea of getting help and support. And this came from some of the questions that we were discussing after the recording stopped, because people felt more comfortable discussing things without being recorded. And one way to get support is to obviously go through our Bobcat Balance resources and go through the Doctors on Demand that is linked there in the wellness resources, as well as through the ComPsych pages that can give you legal consultation and other things like that. Another thing that I think could be useful is if you just search for a professional who can understand your specific needs. And you might be able to do that by going on Psychology Today. And when you go on Psychology Today, you can find a therapist who has specific specialties and who are in your vicinity. So you can put in your zip code and then you can filter your search by the type of specialties that you're looking for. And they may be able to better match the needs that you have. And then you can look up the providers on their websites and see what types of insurance they take. And if they take our Health Select insurance, then you only have to pay a copay. And if they don't take it, then there's a deductible that you have to meet for out-of-pocket counseling services, but then it will be covered after you meet the deductible. So you can find out more about that on our Health Select website. And I encourage you to look for those counselors who may be able to provide you the specific information that you need, and also to look for support groups that you think might be helpful to you. So maybe you go on Facebook and you look for groups of parents or other caregivers who have gone through similar experiences, and they might be able to provide you advice and other resources that are out there as well. And again, looking at those parent-to-parent connections or caregiver-to-caregiver connections that might be available on some of the state and other organizations' caregiving pages. I hope that that's helpful in terms of other places that you might seek support besides Texas State and Bobcat Balance. Although those are good resources to start with, you might find that broadening your search to include some of those other supports would be really helpful to you. Okay, thank you.